1897, and Adolph Luetgert, Chicago's sausage king, was arrested and charged with the disappearance and apparent murder of his wife, Biz's. There was a problem. There was no body to be found. Without a body, how could the prosecution charge the sausage maker with murder? Judge Richard Tuthill must have anticipated this dilemma. After reading his final instructions to the jury before proceedings, Tuthill addressed the problem of not having a corpus a body. 2. Prove the corpus delicti in a case or murder does not require the state or prosecution to produce the body of the alleged deceased, or any part thereof, or the testimony of any witness. If Adolph had killed and disposed of his wife, where was she? To add to matters, witnesses had come forward, insisting they had either talked to or had seen Louise Luetgert near Kenosha, Wisconsin. Oh wait, here she is now in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Now, she is seeking a divorce consultation with a lawyer in Nebraska, claiming that she had deserted her husband and wanted out of their marriage. Nets. She was seen working on a steam barge as a cook and had stayed with a Polish family in Ashland, Wisconsin. Written notes stuffed into beer bottles were found floating in Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. The notes desperately seeking help from potential rescuers in dealing with her kidnappers, slotting alongside the rotting animal carcasses that floated down the river and into the lake. The bottles were nothing more than typical flotsam and jetsam. But someone had written these pleas for help. Someone who was trying to sway the jury or simply wanted attention. As the events unfolded, the attention seekers were winning out. 2. Even Chicago's Mayor Carter Harrison, too, had received a letter from another Louise Luetgert, confessing, "I must give up. I am the wife of A.L. Luetgert. I have been in Chicago since the 1 of May and live with another man. Do not try to find me." Near the end of the trial, a letter from Cedar Falls, Iowa was received in Chicago by a postmaster Gordon. "I am in the land of the living and not ground up into sausage as reported. Gone, and never to return no more. Can't stand the disgrace. Goodbye to all." And signed by Mrs. Ella Luetgert. In all, Louise had been seen in over 100 cities, despite the absence of physical evidence. Speculation and sensationalism flooded the prosecutor's office, with every rumor and eccentric theory adding to the growing judicial spectacle. As the prosecution struggled to build its case, the city's fascination with the vanished Louise grew, fueled by the strange testimonies and an ever-growing cast of unusual characters, from the melancholy diagnosis to the mind reader hoping for a private audience with Adolph Luetgert. The trial became as much a public curiosity as a legal proceeding, blurring the line between justice and entertainment while the fate of the Sausage King hung in the balance. There were charges brought about by witnesses that Louise had been acting peculiar in the weeks before her disappearance, punctuated with a long-distance diagnosis by a criminologist of the missing sausage queen as female melancholy degeneracy, brought about by the new Freudian theme of menopause. 2. In the meantime, the sausage maker had his own unique set of problems. Over 2,300 women had called on Adolph, while 1,200 had written to him, including 33 marriage proposals. News. One out-of-town newspaper described Luetgert's sudden charm appeal as the production of female degenerates. Hesson Arnold saw the situation as such. 2 prize winners in the bunch I saw last week, one a little blonde and the other a tall brunette with big, fetching eyes. They all want to be Mrs. Luetgert, the Sausage King. Indeed. One admirer went as far as to propose a rogue operation that would hypnotize the judge, jury, staff, and spectators, while simultaneously moving Luetgert through solid walls and to the free air and liberty and me, said the would-be lover, taking the bait. Adolph wore a white flower in his lapel as a prearranged signal that he was ready to beam up. But nothing happened. It took a long month of interviewing witnesses, calling in experts, and further judicial jockeying before the trial began. Oh. In the meantime, the notion that a sausage maker could grind up, seasoned, and hickory smoke his wife seemed plausible to many in the Windy City. The rumors cascaded throughout Chicago that Louise had been stuffed into a clean sheep casing, to be enjoyed, perhaps, with a slice of buttered pumpernickel bread and a beer from the local Seep Brewing Company. A space filler in the Daily Standard-Union in Brooklyn noted that the evidence in the case of Luetgert, the Chicago sausage maker, accused of wife murder, has almost stopped the use of sausage in that city. The court case brought up the now famous observation of Germany's Otto von Bismarck that to retain respect for sausages and law, one must not watch them in the making. Chicago's Inter-Ocean newspaper later added that all one had to do was to whistle on entering the butcher shop in order to make the sausage links wag themselves. So many customers began shunning the eating of sausage that the industry began to panic. Manufacturers pray for speedy end of Luetgert's trial, headlined the Chicago Chronicle. Followed by remarkable decrees in business follows the Germans' arrest. Since women were the household food purchasers and food preparers, there was widespread speculation that this was a pushback from women who had possibly purchased Luetgert's fine selection of summer sausage. Perhaps his fenolaced Italian sausage, the hearty German Gelbwurst or flavorful French sausages, and could just imagine their chief source of protein in front of them. With a spectacle in full swing, the trial of Adolph Louis Luetgert, former sausage king, began. Troubles started with conflicting testimonies of who either saw Louise buy the sausage plant the night of her disappearance or did not, words, or the courtroom back and forth. The strongest piece of evidence against Luetgert was the discovery of some bone fragments, possible corset buttons, and 2 gold rings, one with the initials LL inscribed in it, all located in what would be described as the middle vat. The container also held a small amount of reddish-brown liquid, and after a good draining of the vat and some more particles of bone, an employee had testified that Luetgert had earlier ordered around 375 pounds of potash, ostensibly for the making of soap. Police later found 100 boxes of soap already in inventory, with the prosecution team claiming that Luetgert had loaded his wife into the middle vat mixture of potash, steam and hot water. The lawyers took their evidence trail even further. 2. With the full cooperation of the Rush Medical College, the lawyers instigated an experiment that was as horrifying as it was unique in the realm of science. In the presence of a number of citizens, medical experts, and experts of the scientific world, corpse was brought to the ale sausage company and dumped into the middle vat, approximating its caustic solution strength on the night of May 1st. Within 2 hours, the body had disintegrated, except for a few small bone splinters. The flesh had dissolved into a small quantity of fluid about the consistency of molasses. Back at the courthouse, the typical gawkers showed up for the court doings, but they were soon augmented by a score of men from the Luetgert factory area. They demanded entrance to the courthouse. East Chicago Avenue Police Station sent backup, but by the time they arrived, the sausage maker's friends now numbered around 200. The demonstrators eventually retreated after a few vigorous applications of the billy clubs. Licked bad for the sausage king, but the score or so of Louise sightings and counting, the conflicting testimonies, and the spectacle of the Grand Rush medical experiment proved too much for some members of the jury. The jury's waffling began with the question of punishment. Their instructions from Judge Tuthill had been to find Adolph either not guilty or punishable by hanging. The minority of jurors were afraid to find Luetgert guilty if execution was their only choice. When the judge explained to the jury foreman that not guilty or death were their only choices, they resumed their deliberations. 2. After 66 hours of sometimes contentious back and forth, 3 jurists voted not guilty. Their objection: what if Louise really was alive? 2. Living with the guilt of hanging an innocent man was too much to bear for them. At least life imprisonment would leave the door open for Luetgert's release if Louise returned, rather than the alternative. Sausage sales continued to plummet. One enterprising playwright took advantage of the situation and was preparing for the opening of a play, titled The Sausage Maker of Lakeview. The lead character was to look like Adolph. If the enterprise succeeded, the author had plans to have Luetgert play himself provided, of course, the sausage maker be not convicted. Noted the New York Times. And then it was over. Shortly after 10 a.m., October 21st, 1897, Judge Tuthill appeared at the criminal court building, and after a brief consultation with State's Attorney D.N.R., sent for the jury foreman to see if there was even the remotest chance that the jury could reach a verdict that day. Taking the impetus one step forward, Tuthill decided to have the question firstly posed to the jury in his chambers, with Luetgert and his lawyers present. Now, back in the courtroom, the jurors seated in their boxed area. Judge Tuthill addressed the jury foreman, a man named Highcold. Mr. Foreman, have you agreed upon a verdict? We have not, Highcold responded. Do you think there is any prospect of your agreeing? Asked Tuthill, knowing where all of this was heading. I think. Not, answered Highcold. In fact, I am almost positive. But before he could finish, the courtroom erupted. The quiet murmurs that had persisted throughout the trial swelled, rising into a crescendo as the tension in the room became palpable. The suspense and uncertainty among both the spectators and the reporters finally broke, erupting into a roar that echoed across the crowded courtroom. I am positive, I should say, that we cannot agree upon a verdict. The ballot has been the same now for upward, exactly 38 hours, since the 15 minutes of 8 o'clock the day before yesterday. It has been the same. Asked the judge. It has been the same, said Highcold, and I put the question to each member of the jury, and they say they will positively hold to their opinions and will not change minds. No influence and no argument will cause them to change their minds. Jet. Tuthill polled each juror. 3 found Luetgert not guilty. The spectre of Louise returning if Adolph were executed was too much for them. Tuthill went even further, giving his opinion on the verdict. The own judgment, indeed, concurs with all, and I think it is useless to keep you longer confined in this matter. I therefore enter an order for the discharge of this jury. The defendant will be remanded. Fear. Yes, sir, we will try him again, said State's Attorney D.N. When asked to the probability of Luetgert being brought before the court a second time, B. Those nearest to the courthouse door were prepared to carry Luetgert about Clark Street on their shoulders. Luetgert, however, remained behind bars. Thea reacted by making a public statement. To the public, the result of my trial ending today is a victory for me because of the disagreement of the jury. But I am very much disappointed of the jury. But I am very much disappointed and very much surprised that the jury did not bring in a verdict of not guilty. I did not kill my wife, and do not know where she is, but I am sure that it is only a question of time until she comes home. It was all up to State's Attorney D.N. for a retrial. The costs of the trial, including throwing a cadaver into a vat of caustic mixture, had run over $15,000. Tone. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and a thumbs up. Thanks. Be sure to come back to part 3 of Sausage Vat Murder. Part 3. The conclusion. It's supernatural.